Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, Adel. Good to see you on a Saturday morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, David. Good to see you.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning. Hi.
Doesn't everybody love the Tony Wilkinson voice over the smooth jazz?
Yes.
Put fake plants behind
Hey,
it.
good morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone.
Good morning, Paul. Good to have you.
Morning, Councilmember.
Good morning.
We need to farm Tony out to the Grand Central Station in LAX. The white zone is for unloading and loading customers only, passengers only.
So, David, are you excited about your Raiders?
The best part of 2020, undefeated so far. Yeah, I was in the SC band. We did games at the Coliseum. I never did the Rams there, but I did a Raiders game or two. So I saw Allegiant Stadium back in July from a distance. So
Looks nice.
that's one redeeming part of 2020. But I'll switch to my Dodgers hat maybe at the break.
David, if you're having fun with the Raiders, but I have a more working question. Somebody named Kevin Davis was potentially the co-moderator with me, but I don't see him on the call. If he never shows, can you do it since you know Zoom?
Well, anything I can do to help?
Okay. Well, I'm a last minute, I think, substitute for somebody else. So.
Oh, okay.
So, and then, anyway, or Mr. Davis might end up on the call. He's got 4 minutes to go. Thank you.
That's good old neighborhood council resiliency in action.
Yeah.
For those of you who are LA River fans, I was just looking at Insta. I think that's what they call it, be brief. And KCET has a Lewis McAdams, a celebration of life going on tomorrow. That might be interesting.
Yeah. It was a special person.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. It's 11:30. We have about 27 attendees. So we wanted to wait till 11:30 to give everyone a break, even though the opening session had ended a little bit early, which is fine. So we want to make sure everyone could get here. So let's get started. My name is John Darnell, and I'm a Neighborhood Empowerment Advocate and Chief Resilient Officer with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. This is the City Programs for Neighborhood Councils workshop. Before I hand it off to Laura Myers, President of the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council, who will be your moderator, I'd like to say a few words about our two guests. We have two guest speakers today, and thank you both for coming. First, we have Los Angeles City Councilmember Paul Koretz, who represents the 5th District. Councilmember Coretz has been a big supporter of neighborhood councils while on the City Council, and even before this, as a private citizen, as a member of the Mid-City West Community Council's Public Policy Committee, where he offered his expertise as a lawmaker. He has attended numerous Congress of Neighborhood events through the years, as well as numerous neighborhood council budget days, which is a smaller but still very important event put on by the budget advocates and is probably the second largest event in the neighborhood council system. Councilmember also serves on the city's Budget and Finance Committee. Our department highly encourages your neighborhood council to get involved with the budget advocates and also look at what services and programs, as we will discuss some today, are affected by the city budget and do community impact statements or write letters to your elected officials. Second, we have Adel Hagekhalil, who is the Executive Director of StreetsLA, excuse me, or as some of you know it as the Bureau of Street Services. This bureau inside of the Department of Public Works is responsible for slurring and resurfacing your streets, sidewalk repair, street maintenance, requests for permits in the public right-of-way, and much more. Adel was appointed in 2018 and has done an amazing job in keeping the tradition of having one of the best street services agencies in the nation. He has been a leader in making our community safer and more livable. Laura, I'd like to pass it off to you now.
Okay, thank you very much. And can you all hear me? Yes? Yes. Okay. So this is a Zoom meeting format rather than a webinar, so it can devolve into a free-for-all, and we hope that does not happen. So I would request, I believe, John, is it correct that people can mute or unmute themselves in this format?
Yes, I think what we should do.
I don't want them to do it necessarily, but can they?
Yes, they can. I think if someone has questions, I think we could have hands raised, and we'll be able to see that. So we'll go maybe one speaker at a time and see the hands raised. We'll see it in order. So we'll take you in order.
Right. So if you're not familiar with the Zoom meeting format, especially if you go to neighborhood council meetings that are done by Zoom webinar, to be able to raise your hand, you first need to scroll with your little arrow down to the bottom of the black screen and pull up where you see the word participants. You need to pull that up and it will sit on the right-hand side, ideally, of your Zoom screen. And I'm not having you do that so you can see all the people here, although you will see all the people here. But then at the bottom, you'll see the phrase raise hand. So what I'd like to see, can everyone get there, and then just to test the system, will you all raise your hand? So click the little button that says raise hand so we make sure everybody knows how to do it. I only see 3 raised hands. 4, 5, 6. Okay, now it's happening. So a lot of you have still not figured that out or don't wish to. Option next, if you're having trouble with the blue raised hand, you'll also see at the bottom of the black screen with your arrow a reactions. I'm going to click on reactions and I'm going to put a thumbs up on my screen. That's another way to get David or John's or my attention, but prefer the raised blue hand. Okay, got it. Third choice would be to chat to John, because I won't be reading chat while moderating because I'll be busy, and say I'm having trouble raising my hand, but I'd like to speak. So, that's not the best option, but it's an option. Okay. And beyond that, so David Ubersas, can you introduce yourself and just explain, well, I'll explain why I asked you to be the co-moderator, but say who you are and how much technology experience you have.
I'm Dave Ubersachs. I've been Zooming for a while, of course, in my normal work and training with LAUSD and my abnormal work. We fought. I'm the president of Winnetka Neighborhood Council and vice chair of the LA Neighborhood Council Coalition, otherwise known as LANC. And early on, back in March, LANC, a lot of the other presidents, that's how I got to know Laura, were getting together to figure out how we could get back operating virtually. We worked with Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, and they were great, really doing something on a wide aspect so everybody had the same opportunity, and importantly, the resources, so we didn't have to buy our own licenses. So I've been doing this WebEx, other systems for a while, and I'm glad to be pressed into service today. Thank you, Laura.
Okay, so last but not least, I really hope everybody follows these kind of easy Zoom rules. If somebody speaks out of turn too often, I'm going to guess that John or David will mute you just right out the bat. So let's try and follow these protocols. So I am not sure, Mr. Koretz and, oh yeah, I'm going to ruin this, Mr. Hagekhalil. Do you have, either of you have prepared remarks before we start?
I do, if you'd like to give me a few minutes.
Oh, fine. So why don't we
I'll
start,
do the same following
start
afterwards.
with you. And then we'll start with, can I say Adel? That'd be fair. Anyway, start with Mr. Koretz.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Laura, and thank you, John, for the nice introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you today, and thank you for inviting me. I appreciate the opportunity to join an energized group of neighborhood council leaders from across the city working together, and the positive energy, respect, and commitment our city is encouraging at a time of national polarization and division, I think is absolutely critical, so I appreciate it. I mostly want to chat with you about planning issues at the state level. And despite our good work to try to bring about change in land use policy, we find ourselves fighting for local control. And I've fought hard in opposing bad land use bills at the state level that would take away local control and threaten the very urban fabric of our communities in giveaways to the developers, in my view. I was a leader in opposing SB 50, which was defeated, and continue to fight this year to defeat 9 bad planning bills from this past legislative session. I helped to brand them as the 9 bad bills so we could focus on them as a group and not let anything through. And one element almost all of these bills have is that they all try to destroy single-family zoning, which is a philosophy of Senator Scott Wiener, who is at the bottom of these pieces of legislation. I think there was a late start to oppose them due to other more pressing issues, obviously COVID, our economy as a result, the danger of tenants and business.
Okay. I think we've lost Mr. Koretz's.
Which would have, among
There he
other,
is. There you go.
which among other things would have shoehorned additional market rate units onto single family properties, as many as 8 units on a single family lot, without any community benefits and bypassing requirements for affordable housing. And that's not the worst of it. SB 1120 also would have affected the Venerable Subdivision Map Act, and it would have removed the subdivision committee for city staff from planning, building and safety, and engineering, transportation, fire, rec and parks, all work together to protect trees, ensure proper grading, erosion control, construction of basic infrastructure, etc. And a statewide coalition, which I was part of, helped prevent that bill from getting enough votes until it was too late. It came down to the wire, and at the last second, it passed a few minutes before midnight by the barest of margins, and then there wasn't time to coordinate between the 2 houses, and so it lost. But that effort will be back, I'm sure other terrible legislation similarly will be back. We need to watch out for it, and I'll be more focused on it this year. Also, Scott Wiener has authored several bills to allow alcohol to be served at bars and nightclubs and restaurants until 4 a.m., which will result in many drunk driving injuries and deaths and massive costs to local government for enforcement and emergency response. This also was expected to pass easily. We managed to fend this one off as well, but it will keep coming back, and I think we need to watch out for it. And certainly in a city where we've had coalitions to rein in liquor stores and other alcohol uses, this should be something we are focused on. I've worked hard also to make the right recommendations and decisions for our communities, to preserve what is best about them, and to lead us in the future with compatible growth. And now we're engaged in the community planning process, where we're shaping our future at the local level. And I want you to know that I'll continue to stand up for local control and carry that message to Sacramento, that we locally know what's best for our communities and we'll fight for them. One other thing I wanted to focus on is the need to deal with planning and COVID, and particularly with short-term rentals. We found that this is an opportunity for scofflaws to rent huge properties and have massive parties, which are opportunities for super spreading events. And so we both fought hard to get response and shut these places down one by one. We thank the mayor for his direction in allowing party houses that are repeat offenders to have their electricity and water shut off, which will help. And I've also authored a motion to create an ICO that prevents larger homes to be rented through the short-term rental process throughout COVID. So we can prevent these super spreading events. Those are just some of the planning related issues that I've worked on and are concerned about. But so much of what we do depends on the relationships we build, and that's why I'm here today, to help inform and empower through our engagement with one another. And I also want to say I'm proud that I brainstormed the original creation of the neighborhood councils with Councilman Joel Wax and his chief of staff, Greg Nelson, at the time. And I couldn't be prouder to see all of the great work that has come to us and all the terrific things that you all do. So thank you for everything that you do, and thank you for having me join you today.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm just going to say, Adel, I don't mean to be too personal. Do you have?
Please do. My last name is Hagekhalil, Adel Hagekhalil, but I go by anything. As long as you call me, I'm okay. I'm here to serve you, and I'm proud at the Neighborhood Congress. And these are special times. Special times that require special actions. Thank you, Councilman Koretz, for your leadership, and thank you to the Neighborhood Congress and Neighborhood Councils. I'm proud of, this is completed my second year at StreetsLA, and really, as I promised all of you, I want to transform StreetsLA to a agency that is a world-class agency and taking care of the city and providing world-class street network. I'll tell you, we've done great things. We've done great work. And one of my goals, I'm an environmentalist, and I have all my life over the last 32 years working on water issues, enhancing community benefits, taking care of stormwater, greening communities. But I believe in the 3 I's all the time: integration, innovation, and inclusion. And I bring that culture into what I do. This is the time, and I brought in this idea of what we need to do is stretch our dollars, do more with less, coordinate, collaborate, because at the end of the day, we need to provide services at the highest level, but do it in a coordinated, integrated way. And that's something I brought to StreetsLA, and I'm proud of the work that we are doing. And I'm proud of the staff I have and the leadership I have, trust I have from the mayor and council in helping lead the way. We've started, as you know, a neighborhood advisory council for StreetsLA that regularly to provide and advise and provide input into what we do. We held our second tree summit as part of the inclusion, and we're going around neighborhood also giving reports on our tree inventory that led by Councilman Koretz and many others, Councilman Blumenfield, on putting together an inventory. Every tree in this city, neighborhood council by neighborhood council, and the reports will be done in neighborhood by neighborhood council. A video on our accomplishments in 1920. I'd love for you to listen to it and see the great work of many of you. And I know number one issue is safety. The second one is the urban heat and days with the COVID and the economic recovery that we have to do. We have a mission of enhancing the quality of life for all. This is what we see our job doing, making our streets safe, mobile, and sustainable in every way. You know, we prioritize the work, use data to bring data in. I'm bringing an asset management system into StreetsLA to use data to help find out where is the area that we need to invest the most in. Where can we leverage resources? We're integrating mobility. We're integrating, areas that we can provide cooling and cool shades and cool streets. Working with LADOT, with Metro, on how we bring in bus lanes, bike lanes into our efforts. We're working on how we plant trees in the area that most susceptible to heat, and working on the transit more safer transit shelters for the city. We added recently during the COVID and 20 hand sanitizing stations at these transit shelters that are heavily traveled. We're working on a shade system. We're going for request for proposals to really get us into the next generation of transit shelters across the city. We just did a couple of hand washing partners, JCDecaux. But also what we have done is actually recently install our city, and that was amazing for us to show that. Safety, and I was able, how we use data to really make sure that the work we're doing is reducing the payouts and the liability. The city pays a lot of money in payouts when it walks trees or streets. We were able to align that. And for the first year, this year, my estimate is that we avoided and liability potential by $335 million. I will repeat, $335 million by aligning and doing failed streets. There's streets in the city that we're never looking at. We're like orphans, and we have not done that for a long time. We're doing those, and that's the highest paid. Every street in this city that we have a claim on, the average is about $250,000. That's the minimum. Some of them go higher. Every sidewalk and trip and fall, the average about $60,000. Every tree that's obstructing our signs and there's an accident, the average is about $60,000. So we were able to go in and fix about 225 of the worst location streets in the city. We paved 120 alleys and took care of them that have not been looked at. I know Councilman Koretz, that was important for you and your efforts. Also, we removed over 7,000 obstructions of trees. We repaired and we brought in a risk and liability program that adds to the Willits accessibility program for sidewalks, because we know there's a lot of sidewalks in the city that needs to be taken care of. And we're trying to do our best at that. And we stabilized over 3,000 locations and repaired permanently outside the Willits case over 120. We're continuing to find ways where we do more and provide safety, because we want to do is what you've told us. We need to think differently. We need to think. We need to be smart on how we dollars, because we'd rather just spend money on investing versus paying money for payouts and something we need to think about how we reduce it. I'm proud of the work we've done. I'm proud of the work of StreetsLA and the men and women of StreetsLA. On sustainability, we're leading the nation urban cooling and cool pavement in the city. We've done that across the city, whether it's in the West Valley, Northeast Valley, and different parts of the communities, adding to it components of shade, transit shelters, and also right now we're looking at bringing the stormwater management into our active transportation corridors. So when we do a project like the one we're doing on Broadway in Manchester and South LA, we have a grant from Caltrans, but we are bringing money from Measure W to add stormwater features, greening, at the same time provide bike lanes, safe access, and greening the community, but also making it safe and accessible. Leveraging that information, planting trees. We really had the record of tree trimming, thanks to the council and mayor for restoring some level of resources. We have trees that were trimmed. There's more needs to be done, but we're doing that on a regular basis. We planted over 1,400 trees ourselves. And we have actually changed our neighborhood council blitz for potholes, and we offered you the option to choose if you want to do tree planting in lieu of pothole repair. That is, we received some from neighborhood councils. We're going to continue working with you. So hopefully after, COVID kind of put a wrench in this whole thing, but we're ready to start planting trees. The summer time is over. Now we can start planting. We're committed to doing that. And we had actually this week, we had Tuesday, we had a big event on trees and how to engage in the urban forest, and Spanish Tuesday and Wednesday with our chief forest officer. And it's an engagement. And to me, I believe we're here to work together to serve your constituents in a very efficient and smart way. And you have a commitment for me. I want to bring technology in. I'm bringing technology in because technology can help us be efficient and do more with less. I'm trying to partner with Water and Power, so when they have a water blowout, we can come in as street service and pave the street that is damaged as a result. And then at the same time, we are reducing the impact on the general fund, but we're also Water and Power restore the streets. So we're thinking differently. We're working with Metro on some of their paving needs. We need to think holistically. We need to and believe in environmental solutions. We brought in the first electric sweeper for bike lanes. We have the first electric vehicles for our staff, and we've had the first CNG truck for our long hauling of vehicles. And we're doing an overall assessment of our carbon footprint by a fuse fellow who's looking at how are deploying our resources. What can we do differently across our operations, both in vehicles and to reduce the emissions we're doing? We're doing great work in bringing people together. I'm proud of the partnership I've had with you in the neighborhood councils. I'm so proud of the leadership in city council and the mayor supporting StreetsLA. We brought our energy, our focus into what we need to do to make our streets world-class streets across the board. And I'm proud that we have accomplished a lot. I believe that we've rebuilt trust with you. We're going to continue doing that. This is tough times. We're dealing with some prioritization of services, but I think the smart way right now is really hitting where we can prioritize services to minimize, reduce liability, at the same time, leverage our resources to do more with less. And I'm proud that we're doing that. For me, I ask you to look at the video. We have a strategic plan posted on our website, streetsla.lacity.org. And also we have our annual report. And I have a commitment for you. We're working on street sweeping. We've actually had it all lined up. During the COVID-19, we adapted our paving to commercial corridors while people are staying at home, which was a really great thing that we were able to do more in the commercial areas that we could not do with all the traffic and the cost. Plus also on street sweeping, we were able to kind of deploy and sweep commercial corridors that we need to do. And that really helps me build the case for our long-term street sweeping, where we're going to expand street sweeping to do more across the city, but reducing the frequency and hitting the areas that have the highest trash versus doing everything on a regular basis. So we're ready to deploy that. We have a pilot ready to go with technology after the restrictions on the parking and get that going. So I'm proud that we are working hard on innovation, integration, and inclusion, and proud to serve each and every one in Los Angeles and make LA a great place. Infrastructure is at the heart of equity, at the heart of economy, at the heart of environment. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I was going to say, I see a hand up already. I'm sure I have several questions for both of our speakers, but I will wait for my questions and start with Tony.
Well, actually, it was kind of an apology to our two wonderful guests from the city and to you also, because I wanted to let you know at the end of the networking session, I read out a bunch of little blurbs about what was happening in each one of these sessions. And I did suggest, I said, if you want to talk with two of the most fascinating, diverse minds, thoughtful people in the city, you got to come to this session, because I not only what everything that General Manager Hagekhalil said, but I remember when you were the assistant director over at sanitation and supported the entire One Water plan to rationalize stormwater and wastewater and potable water, and so you have that interest. And I also reminded them, Councilmember Koretz, of you know, you're in the Energy Environment Committee and the architect of this really amazing multi-million-dollar study with NREL, called the now LA 100 project, to see how the Department of Water and Power can get to 100% renewable energy. And of course, and these, just like Councilmember Koretz is involved in trees, General Manager Hagekhalil is actually an environmental engineer. These folks have a much broader interest. So while we are actually, this is focused, I don't want to take away from it, it's focused on street services and planning. And Laura Myers won't tell you, but she's a fantastic resource on the challenges of neighborhood councils and city planning, everything from historical preservation. I mean, so you guys have awesome people in here, but people may come and ask some broader questions. So I wanted to warn our two, thank you very much for coming. Fantastic guests. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Tony. Lee Blumenfeld.
Yes, hi, thank you very much. Lee Blumenfeld, Encino Neighborhood Council. Most of my remarks will be spoken for myself, not representing Encino. I wanted to thank the council member for being here and being such a strong proponent, and your council deputy for Encino. Fantastic, don't ever replace him. Additionally, I do want to thank Bureau of Street Services and point out Ida Valencia for helping us coordinate little specific issues in terms of street restoration. My big concern lately is the following, that damage is being occurred into our city infrastructure without due correction and citations. And I'll give you one example. One street was resurfaced last November. It was put on my 311 app saying, this person at this address had a construction bin. The construction bin did not have a permit. That bin with the steel rollers damaged the brand new resurfaced asphalt. And please go ahead and take care of it. They came out there. They changed, instead of citing the homeowner for the illegal construction and the damage to our brand new street, they went ahead and they flipped it to pothole repair. And I'm sure all your engineers and Bureau of Street Services will tell you that pothole patch is not going to do it for a street plan for 30 years. Additionally, our concern is we've lost over 60 trees just in one section of Encino within the past year and a half. We cannot replant those trees because the irrigation system is from 1950 and completely non-operational. And we're looking to get something in terms of a corrective factor. We have looked at coordinating with DWP and the Tillman plant to get reclaimed water down the Orange Line Metro to connect to our medians, but we have seemed to run into a problem. And then the last bit that I want to point out is the Cool Streets Initiative is basically a slurry seal and is exempt from the one-year moratorium. So essentially the very next day someone can cut into it. I don't think that's really protecting our infrastructure. And I would highly encourage us to increase the street moratorium to 5 years to save for our resources. Thank you very much for your time.
Lee, did you want anybody to comment, or was this just a statement?
I would love for the Bureau of Street Services to comment, and then maybe if Paul Koretz can give us some insight. I know the Encino Neighborhood Council has proposed a street tree violations, in other words, deputizing urban forestry inspectors as well as public works inspectors to issue citations on the spot and then have the city record these violations. What are his thoughts on that? Thank you.
Okay, so I request that our responses, he's asking 2 people to respond, but each 2 minutes, please. Councilmember Koretz first, I guess, or Adel?
Councilman, go ahead.
I'd probably let Adel go first on some of those.
Okay.
All right, let me talk. Thank you, Lee. I think you make some great points. Enforcement, and this is something it's you know, as you know, the city 2 years ago implemented an ordinance for the street damage restoration fee to bring in money and revenue from utilities that used to cut into our streets. So it's amazing that we're able to bring some revenue in that's going to help reinvest. I fully agree with you in terms of the violations. We have a limited resources in terms of our staff being able to go out in the field, but our investigators and those folks will go out. I agree with you 100%. It's not just a pothole repair. I'm trying to get away from it. Pothole repair is like stabilizing something, but really what we need is the full repair, which we've been doing on many of the streets. On the irrigation, that's really my biggest issue, how we can integrate water and storm water and recycled water, because water is the biggest issue when it comes to us planting. And I'm trying to come up with ideas. So working with these citizen advisory on for urban forest, coming up with policies. So I want to take that what you provided to us and see how we can bring that forward to figure out how we can link planting and watering and recycled water with storm water. You know, we're looking at a cistern down in South LA to build a cistern to capture stormwater so we can irrigate the trees on San Vicente and the Broadway and Manchester area, because I believe strongly that we can do stormwater management at the same time water our trees. And during dry weather, we can fill up with recycled water. So we need to think differently, and that's the thing I'm trying to put in place. And I support you 100%. And we're gonna start doing, we're gonna be working with each neighborhood councils on their inventory. By the way, 35% of the tree wells in many of these areas are hungry for the trees. So we're gonna be working closely with you. But I'd love to take what you provided for me as input, and let's see how we can make it better.
Councilmember Koretz.
Thank you. Just to add a couple things on street repair and then cutting into it quickly. I think many years ago, my friend Councilman Joel Wax was the one that observed that he constantly saw streets being repaired and then construction being done on them almost immediately. And so I think he originally pushed for having some sort of a period whereby you couldn't have construction, which makes sense. I think 1 year is too short. I've observed that for years. I'm not sure which amount I would suggest. 5 years might be desirable, but it also might be impractical. But I think your comment certainly has brought renewed attention for me to that issue. And I'm going to look at bringing a motion to extend it beyond 1 year. I think that would add a lot of efficiency to our street repair program. And also, I didn't realize that slurry seals could be immediately followed up on with cutting into it. I thought that also followed the years. So we will look at that legislatively as well. I think it's a very good point. I've also wished that we could have more enforcement. I wrote one of the measures that allows for more enforcement that creates ACE citations so that we don't have to cite for a misdemeanor or just ignore a violation. We can give a $250 ticket, and usually most people respond to that and clean up their act. But I would love to have some way to deputize volunteers to do some additional enforcement. I'm not sure I've figured out a way to do that, but we'll take another look at that as well as the result of your suggestions.
And just to add also, we have our website has the program for street paving that we didn't have before. So what we're doing is trying to look ahead and provide utilities and people a look at the program and what we're trying to do, so to better coordinate. So it's also a coordination. So we're doing our part also to make sure that the data is available on what programs we're doing over the next 5 years. So that's a good thing.
Hey,
Thank
Laura,
you.
this is John. I just want to make one quick announcement.
Sure.
For those on the phone, if you'd like to raise your hand, please click *9 so we can recognize you, since you don't have that feature to click, on your computer or on your, smartphone. So remember, if you're calling in, perfectly fine. Thank you for attending. Just click *9 if you'd like to ask the council member or the director of StreetsLA a question. Thank you.
Okay. So I was going to say, I see now 3 blue hands, that I was going to take the 2, Gina and then Assad, and then there's been some questions posted in the chat, and I know David Ubersax has a question as well. So I'm going to do the order would be Gina, Fields, Assad, I'm not trying your last name, David, 2 things that are in the chat, then Robina. Okay, Gina.
Great, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for being here. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. Yeah, in our area, I'm in ECWA, Empowerment Congress West in South Los Angeles, and we love our big, beautiful trees here. However, the maintenance is just, there's no maintenance schedule, or if there is, we certainly can't find it. We've been trying to get these very, very tall palm trees, you guys all know the palm trees we're referring to, the really tall ones, cut for almost 3 years now, and 4 years now, and we haven't been able to get that. Also, we have so many streets that are broken up and make it hard for the elderly and the disabled or challenged in wheelchairs to be able to travel along our streets. We 311, we 311, we 311 constantly. They say, okay, your request has been received. Great, we're handling it. But nothing ever happens. I mean, 4 years of trying to get trees cut, and multiple corners will be requested over and over that they come do something, whether that's shaving the roots of the trees to get the sidewalks more even. We had one of our co-chairs actually tripped over a broken sidewalk and broke her arm just a week ago. So this is a pressing need in our area. And we know there's lots of construction, lots of things going on in South LA, but what can we do to get our trees cut? What can we do to get our sidewalks repaired?
So I'll just tell you something. We've been doing this last 2 years. We've done more tree trimming and more sidewalk repair and more streets. The city has, I mean, I'll tell you just from my research, about 30 sidewalks in need of repair across the city. Just researching the 311, and we don't have the resources to do all that. And we are trying to prioritize. That's why we've been working really hard on how we do that. We've done more failed streets and more street paving than ever. We're prioritizing that effort. But in terms of trimming, I mean, the cycle of trimming right now is about 20 years. What we need to get to is 7-year cycle. But we are going around working with council officers.
Apologies, I'm sorry. The cycle is how many years?
It's about, the existing cycle is about 20-year cycle.
So every 20 years we'll get our palm trees cut?
I'm just, yeah, working through it. And what I'm saying is it's all about resources. As you know, council, through Councilman Blumenfield and Councilman Coretz, we're committing to the COVID-19 efforts and the pandemic, that every year we're going to increase our resources for tree trimming by 2 crews to get us to what we need in year 5 over the 5-year program to allow us to get to a place that we go into what we call a 7-year trimming cycle. At this point right now, with the economic downturn, with the hiring freeze and many things, we are looking at how we're going to partner with each council office on figuring out how we continue serving and doing the best. But if you can share with my staff or give me your link here in the chat, your contact, or you can email me at Adel Hagekhalil at lacity.org. Give me that stretch of palm trees and see what I can check on. And any of the priority, if you can share that, I'll have my staff connect with you to get your priorities. Which council office you're in?
Empowerment Congress West.
Yeah, with
South LA.
CD8 or CD9?
CD 10 and 8. Most predominantly 10, and then
10.
partially
Okay.
8.
We'll work with with Councilman Wesson, and I know he committed some funding from his discretionary funds for tree trimming. We're working through the priorities. So if you don't mind sharing information, Gina, I'd love to have my staff follow up with you, and we'll figure out how we do it, and we'll continue working through it. Okay.
Great, appreciate that.
Thanks.
Will do. And then also, though, the second part of my question was street safety. And is there any consistency with sidewalk repair?
I mean, the sidewalk repair, as you know, I came in, that was my biggest concern. And the council approved 2 crews to do what we call risk and liability and really take worst case scenarios. For elderlies, there's a whole program on the Willet accessibility and there's a backlog. But I wanted to stabilize some of the only is the quality of life, but also it's a risk in exposing the city for a lot of payments and payouts. Some of that work, we did 3,000 stabilizations, we did permanent repairs in addition to what we've done on the Willet's case. But as you know, by 60%. But I'm trying to find out how we can do more. I'm working with each of the council offices to bridge this gap of funding ideas. But if you have a priority, I'll have my staff reach out to you. I know 311, I'll tell you, if you look at it, we have about 30,000 locations in the city that needs to be taken care of. And for me, I see that as a huge need when it comes to sidewalks. But I'll be more than happy to look at a priority or 2 and see how we can help. Your input as neighborhood council is critical. You're our eyes in the community. And we'll do our best. I mean, we are working hard to serve you, but I'd love to see if there's a way we can help working with the council offices and also working with you directly.
Greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'll put my information in the chat.
I wanted to add, one is in some of these areas, we have many decades of deferred maintenance. I don't know what the current status is, but I know at one point during the last recession, we were on a 90-year cycle in terms of sidewalk repair. We also had some difficulty because we were setting aside money in the budget for sidewalk repair, and then at the end of the year, we were told nothing had been done. But because of the Willits lawsuit against us, we're committed, whether we like it or not, and that was the best lawsuit we ever lost from my perspective, to commit $25 million and then more on an ongoing basis for 25 years. And at the end of the 25 years, we're up to around $65 million a year. So it's a significant amount. It's prioritized on several bases, including people who are disabled and need access and have specific locations that stand in their way. But it'll take a while because we have allowed ourselves over the many decades to have a huge backlog. The other thing is, I recall during the last recession that we got rid of our palm tree trimming equipment. And so I don't know if we've ever purchased any kind of a palm tree rig. And
yeah,
so
we do. Yeah, we got brand new equipment, Councilman. Yeah.
So we have.
I'd love to have that equipment used over here. I'm looking out my window right now, and we've got, you know, those really tall palm trees. There's nothing we personally can do about it. So we'd love to get that help.
So now that we have the equipment, I'm glad to hear that we actually have it and don't have to wait for a contractor. Hopefully we can help your area as soon as possible.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And is there any list or any where you know who's coming to what area is getting worked on? Because I see a lot of work happening in Culver City and not so much happening over here in Leimert Park, Crenshaw Manor.
We've done a lot of work in the South LA area, but we can get you the schedule with my staff. They have a schedule where they're going to be, but also we're working with the council office. As I said, Councilman Wesson has really dedicated a lot of his discretionary funds into helping tree issues and tree trimming. So I'll have my staff work on the schedule, but for your specific location, we can do that. And I think my staff put in the in here about for anybody who wants to reach out to you still do your 311, but if you want to reach out to my staff who is in charge of your service to your neighborhood councils and responding to specific issues, to each one of you is critical to me. You can email at StreetsLA ERT at lacity.org. I have staff. Elise is on the call. Martin Schlegerer. I have a dedicated email address for you to reach out. If you want to have, do 311. I'm not saying don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have access to a specific, to ensure that your voice is provided to us, please do that. Email us any concerns. Every minute, every day, we're here to serve you, and we'll try to figure out how we can communicate with you better and how we can address your issues if we can.
Great, and if you guys don't mind, could you put that in the chat? That would be great, and I can grab that from there. And thank you. Yes, Laura.
It is in the chat, and I will take this opportunity to tell everybody, if again, at the end of the meeting, don't do it now. The chat, there is a chat, and if you look at the bottom sort of right-hand side of the chat, there's 3 little dots, and before you log out of this meeting, if you click on the 3 little dots, you can save the meeting chat, and you'll have all of these emails download to your own computers. And I'm sorry for the folks on their phones. I imagine, in addition, somehow this material will be at the Congress of Neighborhoods later.
And just thank you so much, and thank you for the useful information. I appreciate it.
Okay. So it'll be Assad, and then, like I said, I'm going to pull a question or two out of the chat. Then it'll be David. Then it'll be John Darnell. Then we're back to Robina. So Assad.
Yes, good afternoon, Councilman Cortez. Good to have you here. Good afternoon, Adel. I'm Assad Al-Najjar with the Porto Ranch Neighborhood Council. And I want to thank you, Adel and StreetsLA. We had a lot of actually success stories with the 311, and especially your urban forestry and all your staff has been very responsive with the 311. We upload the pictures and we send the request, and on average 24 to 72 hours we get it. Especially your urban forestry works very close with us. We're still in their development, so they keep us posted on whenever there's a tree removals and coordinate with us on the new trees. The one item we need still to be addressed is paving the old streets in Porto Ranch that are probably grade C or grade D. I'm not the expert in the asphalt, but we will be sending you a request for possibly Porto Ranch Drive, Cessnan, Mason, few of these that need immediate attention. I'm not sure if you have it on your schedule at this time, but we would love for you to address them. And thank you again for the best job you do for us, guys.
I would say is go to our website, streetsla.lacity.org. There's actually a new drop down that shows all the work that we did over the last 5 years and all neighborhood, your neighborhood councils, what streets needs to be done. You can find the condition of a street. If it's not there, just provide that information. We'll see how we can prioritize and integrate into our program.
Thank you very much. We'll send you the request. Thanks.
Okay. So there was a comment sort of question in the chat from, I've already lost who it was, from East LA about the watering for Evergreen Cemetery and recycled. we have several really, really old cemeteries. So it's not just Evergreen Cemetery in Boyle Heights. It's also Angeles Rosedale in the West Adams area. Both of them date from late 1870s, early 1880s. Their pipes for the irrigation kind of date that far too, in some cases. And one of the issues, I'm very involved with Angeles Rosedale. So one of the big issues is the rates they are charged for the water is commercial rate instead of, it's just, you know, there's nothing going down the sewer basically. It's just going into the grass of a grassy cemetery. And I think I would ask Councilmember Koretz to look into not just the idea that appeared in the chat of recycled water somehow getting to our older historic cemeteries, but even if that can't happen, I don't know how it can happen, but even if it's just the regular water they're already paying for, if there couldn't be a more inexpensive rate so they actually can afford to water our cemetery grounds. These are, you know, these are our prior generations. They tell the history of Los Angeles, and it would be nice to be able to walk into the cemeteries and have a green space, especially in this time of COVID. All right, so David Ubersax, you had a question you thought you might?
First of all, I wanted to echo what Saad was saying in particular in terms of the great impact and work we've done with Bureau of Street Services and Public Works in general. One of the comments that I was looking at, and actually was just texting a committee member of mine because we had one of those streets, one of those failed streets that was finally on the docket to be remade in April. That was kind of suspended because, and this kind of goes to the overall issue that was mentioned earlier, a lot of the work that has been done in its place, because there's less traffic going on, we've seen other tremendous improvements on some of the more major arteries. In fact, we'd fought for one stretch of Winnetka Avenue for a long time to have bike lanes restored, and now it practically goes to the past us into Woodland Hills and over adjoining Pierce College. So that's really tremendous. We had spent, I think, $49,600 of the $50,000 that Dennis Zine left to each of the neighboring councils in the West Valley before, working extensively with you guys in terms of potholes, but also doing asphalt, small asphalt repairs on the sidewalks where it was possible, hundreds and hundreds of trees being trimmed on a couple of stretches, and in some cases where the sidewalks couldn't be fixed because the trees were uplifted, sadly, a lot of times that means the trees have to come out. In one stretch of Mason Avenue, the trees did come out. They were replaced 5-to-1, and the sidewalk was redone as it approaches the LA River and its walkways. So that's just above and beyond the extra money that we got to do. So I can't say enough about Bureau of Street Services. In terms of the trade-off between that street, it'll be on my list again when we work with the pothole blitz. So my question to Adel is whether that's going to be back in line. And before I said, I also want to say we saw in Councilman Blumenfield's district the first experiment with white streets in Canoga Park, but we had a whole area in Winnetka that had the white street surfacing too as a cooling mechanism. So thank you again for that. But do you know when the neighborhood council pothole blitz will be back in the saddle? Thank you.
Okay, so John, did you have a question?
Oh, well, that was a question for Adel, if he knew.
Yeah, let me just say quick.
It wasn't just a comment. Sorry,
Let
David.
me say something. As you know, during COVID, we adapted and we moved doors. That doesn't take away from what projects were scheduled to be done in April or March, etc. So we're hoping as soon as we get direction as to the parking enforcement and which action will be taken by council soon, we're hoping that we can start bringing back the streets that were scheduled in early this year back onto the schedule. So I think it's a smart way quickly to address because it's efficient. Some of the streets that would take us 4 or 5 days, we're able to do it in 2 days because of less traffic. And we're able to get a lot of them done, which I think is a huge issue. But those streets are not going to go away. If you had those streets in our queue, was scheduled, they're going to come back. I know Councilman Blumenfield will not let us let that go, as Councilman Koretz will not. We will come back, but I'm hoping that we were able to know exactly the street sweeping and parking enforcement question, and hopefully as soon as we do that, then we're going to get back to recover some of the work that we committed to doing before.
And the pothole blitz also.
And the pothole blitz should be in place. We should be able to work with you. If you can email me your contacts to the email address or my personal address, or work with the council office, Michael or whoever from the council office, or Lisa, let me know. We can work with you on scheduling that blitz. I know some of you wanted to have a tree planting.
Trees too.
That is now ready to be implemented hopefully soon after the temperature subsides to start planting. But let me know. I'd love to, each one of you, if you have any interest in this pothole blitz or tree planting, let me know. We can schedule that. It should be scheduled with many of you, but would love to follow up on it, okay?
Great, thank you.
All right. So to put a bug in hats, this would be for Councilmember Koretz. We'll defer the answers, but there's been several private chats to me regarding TOCs and issues with that. So we'll get to that in a minute, but I'm going to do it as I promised and call on Robina.
Hi, everybody. Thank you to our council member and Adel for everything that you've informed us on. I'm with the Rampart Village Neighborhood Council, and Adel had mentioned this just earlier about the Blitz program, and I was wondering, since we have you on here, could you provide a little bit more of like an in-depth description of like how the process works and how we can bring it to our areas? It's something that our neighborhood council voted on in our last meeting to bring to Rampart Village, but we haven't really been able to get more information on it thus far. So I was wondering, since I have you here, to describe really the process and how we can get started and meet regarding it.
Yeah, I think what we can do is, thank you for the question. I'd love to do is if you can contact my staff on StreetsLA, ERT at LA City. These are the neighborhood council staff. They can come to your neighborhood council and is a year for a pothole blitz, or you can do 1 day of pothole blitz, 1 day of tree planting. That each and we can work with you on the schedule and what you want to do. But I prefer if you can just have work with us. We can have somebody come over and meet with any of you, including wants to come over and talk about this pothole blitz or blitz. Let me know. Would love to do that. I'll follow up with you folks. Okay.
Okay. Lee, you've had your hand up. Is this a follow up to your previous or something new?
Yeah, it's a follow up to previous, but I wanted to make sure everyone else had a chance to go before asking.
Right, but I'm gonna migrate the conversation to land use. So if this is a sort of semi-final on the trees and streets.
Yes. So the comments made by Bureau of Street Services and our dear council member about having a lack of personnel for enforcement, just wanted to highlight a scenario where a DOT signal inspector, as well as a contract administration public works inspector witnessed, for example, trees getting destroyed. In order to report said tree, a 311 had to be created. The urban forestry inspector had to go show up and actually witness it in order to write a notice to correct. Now, all three of those people could not legally write a citation for it. The Bureau of Contract Administration, which used to be called the Inspection Bureau, actually used to have citation powers to go ahead and do that. So while I don't want volunteers, shall I say, doing this, I'm saying let's use our existing assets, and it'll be a self-funding program where we can reclaim revenues and correct deficiencies caused by others that are produce inequity in terms of cost for the city. Thank you.
Good point.
Adele, is there an
Yeah,
answer?
I mean, we have, I mean, I'm not going to answer. It's a very complicated services for compliance. We have the ability to issue 8 citations, and we have been working very hard on that one. But I like the idea of figuring out how we can work with the other department inspectors. Every inspector in the city should be able to act. And I think maybe something we can work with Councilman Koretz on is how we can empower everyone. It doesn't have to waste of time of having it go around. If you see something wrong being done, you should be empowered to act on it as an inspector for the city and a representative of the city, whether you're a building inspector, you're a construction inspector, you're a tree inspector, or you're a regular investigator with watershed compliance. We have a lot of those folks everywhere in the city, even traffic officers. Can we empower everybody to act and do that? So I'd love to figure out how we can, in the spirit of integration, we can maybe look at ways, Councilman, as ways to improve how we do stuff. I think this is the time for us to do more with less. So let's figure out how we do it. I like your idea. So thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. So as I mentioned, I'm going to, for the moment, migrate the conversation to land use, planning and zoning. I've seen a couple of chat comments, and I have my own input, but it's basically regarding TOCs and quote giveaways, unquote, to developers where they can add extra stories without the community getting benefits. And this is essentially most often the TOC program, which stands for Transit-Oriented Communities. So for everyone, for background, the city has a general plan, and part of that is the general plan framework. And that was adopted back in 1996 or so, multiple city planning directors ago, Con Howe. But in the framework, it basically says, kind of across the board, that the city has way too much commercially zoned, strips, be it Crenshaw Boulevard or Vermont in South LA or Ventura Boulevard or whatever in the valley. But more capacity for 3 times as much capacity for commercial businesses as we need. And obviously what we need is housing. So even as far back as 1996, the general plan framework encouraged housing to go on the corridors and to, at the same time, conserve character neighborhoods or stable neighborhoods. So that was the citywide policy we've been working with for decades, and the housing element also adopted that policy. But when the transit-oriented communities ordinance was written, they drew it with circles. They're called tiers, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, and depending on how close a particular proposed project parcel is to bus stops and transit. But those circular tiers are the big thing people are complaining about, because it allows kind of big projects being plopped down in the middle of a neighborhood instead of edging on the corridor. And I will say that for years, United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council has been trying to convince people in our communities that it's even a good idea to have tall buildings on corridors, because it's still overshadow the adjacent neighbors. So, hey, there's a greater good. So essentially, that had been the debate until recently. With the TOCs, it's becoming a bigger issue. And I noticed that the planning department sent out a press release in the last week or so about Boyle, the new Boyle Heights community plan, where a part of that is to take the TOC projects back out to the corridors and to retain the character of neighborhoods. So I had seen a couple of comments in chat. I don't see any blue hands raised at the moment. I know, Gina, you indicated that you're having discussions in your neighborhood council. I got a chat from somebody in Country Club Park, and yo, yay, a blue hand, so that I don't have to keep talking. Elizabeth.
Hi, yeah, I have a question about so I know Boyle Heights is really active on updating their community plans, and we were supposed to have our community plan updated this year, and the process started, and we had some think tank ask us about our feelings about the city of LA, but we actually didn't do any planning. It was interesting. And now we're being told that we can't continue the process, even though it's supposed to be done this year. And we're like, you know, years, decades over when it was supposed to be done. But we're being told by the city we can't continue the process because there's no funding. I don't understand what that means, how that could happen, and how can we do things like, because how can we do this, and why are we being told that we can't include anything on TOC in the community plan when we know that we can?
But when we know that Boyle Heights did.
Well, actually, last year at the Congress of Neighborhoods, when I spoke to the people who did the presentation on Plan Check, they explicitly said in the community plans you can make adjustments to what the TOC guidelines are and how they should fit your neighborhood.
Right. Where are you from, Elizabeth?
Sorry, I'm from Wilshire Center, Koreatown Neighborhood Council.
Got it.
And I can speak to a couple pieces.
Thank you.
Of that. Certainly the cost. I mean, we've, in my view, especially with some of the emergencies we've had, I think we've thrown $100 million here and $100 million there at projects and programs, and we haven't necessarily added up the dollars. So I think we are even shorter than we think, but we are hundreds of millions of dollars short. And so we've had to implement a hiring freeze. We at some point will implement furloughs, meaning people will work less and be paid less for that. So a lot of services will be lost. And we have a program where we have encouraged and incentivized people that are of retirement age but still working for the city to retire.
I'm sorry, can I just clarify? So this process already started, and the budget for this was supposedly set when the schedule for the updates of community plans was made years ago. So I'm not fully understanding
anything about the specifics of this one, but I can tell you we are suddenly much shorter. So the staffing in the planning department for this program might have had the legs cut out from under it. So I'm just generalizing, but everything is shorter. And so between all those things, a hiring freeze, lots of people leaving, now as earlier retirements, furloughs, and that's only what's happened so far. It could actually get worse. And so I'm guessing that is the reason why it was undercut. And I can't speak to how quickly we recover and are able to fund some of the things that we need to fund. It's a real problem, but it's a problem in literally every part of the city budget. So it's very possible. Now, as far as TOC, I probably need a better understanding of exactly how the community plans can override TOC. I'm not a fan. I think it has, among other things, allowed development near transit where folks that are lower income tenants get evicted because of Costa-Hawkins, which could be remedied by Prop 21, which may not pass. If you leave a unit that you've lived in for 20 years and you're paying $1,000 a month, the next person might pay $3,000 a month for the same unit. So once you're out, you can't find another rent-controlled unit that's reasonably priced, because when it becomes vacant, it goes up to luxury market rate housing values. So I think it's been negative in that sense and many others. People say that, well, if you're close to transit, you might actually use transit. And they also then provide inadequate parking. I don't think we are seeing that. It might work in 20 years from now. Right now, what we're seeing is that the people that use transit tend to be the people that can't afford a vehicle. So if you're building brand new luxury, high-priced units, which TOC generally is, you're not the person that's then going to hop on a train or a bus. You are the person that is more likely to have a car and park it in the neighborhood because you didn't get enough parking. So in my district, I negotiate with every developer to ask them to park up their properties more than is necessary for TOC, but for what the actual need will be. Unfortunately, TOC, I think, was originally came out of Measure JJJ. I'm not sure most folks were aware that that gave the right to the planning director to make many of these decisions and to create a program like TOC. And the council has no ability to override that. So unless we actually got an initiative on the ballot to override that original change, we have no control over TOC. It's a by right process. So it's unfortunate, it's a bad idea. I didn't endorse Measure JJJ because I was suspicious, but wasn't entirely clear that this could happen. It's definitely a problem from my point of view. And measures from the state level like SB 50 would only make this kind of step worse and intrude more into residential neighborhoods.
Right. Well, and another big problem with the TOC ordinance is RSO units are not considered affordable housing. So we have seen projects in my community where we lose more on a practical basis. We lose more affordable units than we gain on the TOC, but they're defined differently. So we gain ELI units, extremely limited income ELI units, which are, limited to people who are in the system, but we lose our families who lost their small, older fourplex to demolition. All right, Gina.
I think TOC contributes on a net basis to homelessness, and every time someone's evicted and can't find a unit, they either wind up with relatives or their choices, or some of them wind up on the street, and it's pretty disastrous and contributes to our constant increase in homelessness.
Right. Gina.
Hi, yeah, again, this is Gina Fields from Empowerment Congress West. And thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for addressing a lot of the issues that I was just about to speak to, which is the TOCs coming in our neighborhood. As many of you know, the Crenshaw corridor runs directly through our area, and that is a big metro area that they're developing right now and still working on. And so we have many, many, many TOCs popping up in our area, and it's causing, like you said, a great deal of issues with parking, and it's causing a great deal of issues with affordability. We fight to eke out every little bit of parking we can, but like you said, we don't really have control over that. So neighborhoods that are already cramped with cars, they're bringing in, like just down the street from me, 111 units with absolutely no parking. And then additionally, we had to fight just to try and get them to eke out the 11% of affordable housing in that area as well. So my question is, we're fighting hard for this, for the affordable housing. We're fighting hard to figure out about the parking, because they say, ostensibly when the Crenshaw Metro opens, which it was supposed to do about a year ago, but we still don't have a final date, but that people will give up their cars and start using this Metro Transit. Do we have any system in place to track that? Like, what follow-up will we do to ensure that these developers are putting those 11% of affordable housing units are actually there and it's actually happening? And what do we have, who do we have checking to see, are people giving up their cars? Are they really using the Metro instead whenever it opens? So is there any follow-up on any of these things that we're fighting so hard for? Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I've been pushing for this for several years. I don't know if we've made any real progress on it to create a database of these 11%. I was told initially that it's not practical because it's just a couple of units here and a couple of units there. So to track it and make sure they're implemented is too difficult. So I certainly suspect that some of our less scrupulous developers are listing certain units as affordable and then renting them out at market rates.
I would challenge that too difficult, excuse me, sorry to interrupt, that too difficult, because in businesses, they come to your business every year or two to check and be sure that you have a business license, right? So it seems like they could start going to buildings and checking every few years to see what people are paying and what are they actually adhering to the affordability.
We certainly could at least do spot checks. So if it wasn't every unit in the city, it would be a percentage, and we'd see if there are enough violations to make it worthwhile to go citywide. But we really do need to create a database, and I will check, but I don't believe that despite my many requests that that's ever been done.
Well, any way that the NCs can support you in that effort, we are down for that, because we need to know, you know, I'm fighting so hard to eke out every little bit of affordable housing, and then I don't even know if it's actually happening. So, you know, we would support that effort. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I certainly agree, and I appreciate that offer. We'll see if we can figure out a way that we can make use of neighborhood council's willingness to help.
Okay, so the next person, I don't know your name, but the last 3 digits of your phone number are 246. So it's 310 something 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 246.
Hi, this is Stacy Scher for the Mar Vista Community Counseling. Councilmember Koretz, thank you for being here, and I have been very encouraged by a lot of your statements. As you're probably familiar, we are also bleeding out RSO units for TOC developments that are coming in, and we're running at a deficit. But my question concerns some power that we may be able to utilize to stop some of the bleeding, and that is contained within SB 330 that was chaptered and signed on January 1st. Particularly, there is a section that is the 3rd page to the last that says that the city shall not approve a housing development project that would require the demolition of residential dwelling units unless the project will create at least as many residential dwelling units as will be demolished. And then further says that those units that are protected, which in our city are RSO units, shall be replaced on a 1-to-1 basis. I can't get an answer from HCIDLA on why this is not being enforced in the city of LA, so that when TOC projects or TPA projects come in, we're complying with SB 330 and making sure that we're not losing the protected or RSO units. Can you address that? Thank you.
I do not know, honestly, whether we are enforcing that or not. I don't have any examples of places where we haven't. If you do, I would be grateful for that information, and I will definitely look into it. SB 330 is a relatively recently passed and implemented piece of legislation, so I don't know whether we haven't gotten around to it, where it is in the priority level, if we're even focused or aware of that particular element. So I appreciate you flagging it for me, and we'll definitely look into it.
Is it okay if I send that over to your planning deputy, Daniel Skolnick, who I speak to frequently, and I can give him actual examples that are in the process of being developed right now?
I would be delighted. That would be very helpful.
Right. Stacy, do you know what SB 330 says, if it says anything at all about vesting or non-vesting of projects? I mean, when does this start to apply? Does it only apply to something submitted after it took effect?
I believe that the only clarity that I've had so far, I have one opinion out of HCIDLA and out of the city planning department that they thought that it was for applications that had been filed after January 1st, and somebody else told me it was for permits that were finalized and granted after January 1st. That certainly needs clarity. For the portion I'm talking about, for those who'd like to look at SB 330, and I'm a nerdie. I carry it with me all the time. Chapter 12, which is section 66300, and it is number, I'll give it to you for those who want the reference. It is number 7B, small b, and then go down to, big E, followed by a I, D, 1. And that's where it begins. And it's really clear. It says that any protected units shall be replaced in existing or demolished units that are protected on a one-to-one basis. So, I mean, it's pretty clear. The only unclarity, as you said, was the vesting, and that would have to be determined by the city. Obviously, I believe it's, anything that's approved after January 1st, but some developers are trying to claim anything permitted, applied for before that date. And there was a huge rush to submit applications and plans in December. If you were watching the filings, we had, our ENS system sent us out 17 pages in each report in December. But all of them were not permitted until after January 1st. And in our area, we've got 117 RSO units on the chopping block right now, and all of them haven't been permitted yet, but filed in December. So this is a really important issue that we would love to get clarity on from the city. Thank you.
And I would add, the municipal code has a lot of arcane, detailed sections about who's vesting, and the planning department is only looking at one piece. I hear somebody else talking at the moment. So I would strongly suggest everybody take a little dive into the municipal code, because it basically says that it gives time limits. The vesting does expire if you don't do this or if you don't do that. And for planning entitlement cases, you actually have to pay extra money to be vested. And again, many of the case processing people in the planning department are ignoring that little important piece of state law, not requiring that these applicants pay the vesting fees. So that's a comment. Stacy, I think you're still talking.
Stacy. Can I ask one more question? And I just want to point something out to the council member. Okay, good. We have covenants on our RSO buildings that last for 55 years, and these are for the buildings that were constructed prior to 1978. Simple math tells us that we're losing our 55-year covenants, but nobody has been able to answer yet. If I have a building and the covenant is going to expire in 2 years, and they replace some of the units and covenant them, obviously they're recovenanted for a certain period of time. But for those buildings where we're now facing losing the covenant of 55 years, what happens? Are they able to evict the tenants? Then do they revert to market rate? What is the plan for LA to deal with the loss of the covenants, since many are approaching their dead dates? Thank you.
Okay.
Elizabeth? I'm not sure I have an off the top of my head answer to that, but I know we'll look into it. We've been having covenants expire already, so I know that's a problem. In some cases, we've tried to see whether we can kick in some city money to recovenant them, but in general, I'm not sure. Let me also go back to a previous question about tracking the affordable housing. One of my staff sent me a text that I originally put in a motion to do that 2017 or 2018, and HCID is now working on that. So at some point, hopefully soon, we will have a database. Currently, they operate on an honor system. So the property owner has to confirm that they are offering these as affordable housing. But I'm sure there are some folks out there that are saying they do and not legitimately moving forward with that.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, and I'm Elizabeth. Your hand is up.
Hi,
and
yeah,
you're posted.
Hi, yeah, I just wanted to clarify a couple of things, and I can only say what's been happening in the Worcester and Koreatown neighborhood council area. and what we have been told from the planning department. But as far as the affordable units that are coming through TOCs, supposedly, and I'm wondering if HSID's gone on a hiring rampage, HSID is going to have them listed because there's a website right now for Section 8 housing and affordable housing, and HSID handles that, and usually there's a 1 to 2 year wait list. And so HSID is the one who is going to actually be finding the tenant to rent out through TOCs. And that is what we have been told. And that makes sense because there's currently a system that does that already. But of course, when all these TOCs are finally getting filled, HSID is going to drown. And we're going to have a 3 year waiting list instead of 2. The other thing I'd like to say is that we have also, because just to put it out there, Wilshire Center Koreatown Neighborhood Council has 1/3 of all development in this city happening in our area. 1/3, from single family homes being demolished to RSOs with 20 units being demolished every day. And so we are seeing that planning is requiring that the RSO be replaced. The issue is that RSO doesn't kick in for 5 years from what we've been told. And then once it does kick in, it kicks in at that market rate, not at the market rate that's occurring now. And when they're being, so when the RSO is being replaced, and oftentimes we're seeing the whole building has to become RSO, or they have to, like you guys said, pay a fee to get out of that. But the biggest issue we have is that previously, when we had RSO, and they couldn't validate, there was a state law saying that if there's affordable housing on site, you have to replace it. I don't remember what years passed. And that state law also said if you can't validate if it's affordable housing, then you have to assume it's affordable. Well, somehow in SB 330, they snuck in something to say, nope, no longer. Now you have to send something to the families that live there, and these are RSOs, and you have to have them fill out these forms about their income. Realize a lot of these areas that are getting the development are highly sensitive areas as decided by the state. And we have a high number of undocumented immigrants. We have a high number of people who do not do the type of jobs that get the type of paychecks that they can declare their income in a way that is easy to do. And we have a huge population of people who don't read English, and these are not sent out in every language. So now these people don't fill this thing out. They find out, then the HSID says, okay, so we got the income report from 5 out of 10 units. They then decide that instead of the other 5 units being assumed like they used to be affordable, now they look at what % of your population in that area is low income. In our case, that's 70%. But what that means is that we actually are losing affordable units. The other thing that they're now deciding is it's an RSO, but you happen to make a good amount of money. And why are you able to make that amount of money compared to where you live? Well, let's see, probably because you live in an RSO. And that means you don't count. Just because your unit's affordable, if you make too much money, we're not going to count it as affordable. So SB 330, we're losing affordable units compared to what we were able to get even before SB 330 oftentimes.
I would agree, and certainly I opposed SB 330 also. Part of the problem is, I think, legislators that are trying to make some of these changes that skew things towards more luxury housing and less affordable housing have realized if they author multiple bills, something sneaks through. And while I kind of led a lot of the statewide effort opposing SB 50, I was not as focused on SB 330 because it was not as bad a piece of legislation. But it's very difficult because nobody has the time to just focus on fighting state legislation. So it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole. And that one got through with a lot of negative elements. And the city should be looking at how we can minimize the negativity towards our affordable housing stock. And so if there's something we're not taking advantage of, we need to take a good hard look at that. And anything that you've identified, again, if you could send it to my planning staff, certainly to Daniel Skolnick, and my affordable housing staff person, Jim Bickhart. We can take close looks at that and discuss how we can make those changes.
All right, thank you. I'm going to call on Lee in a minute, but I will say, I know the city council doesn't have a great deal of control over the actual drafting of the TOC ordinance or a redrafting of it. JJ did not mandate circular tiers. I mean, it's really that simple. It just mandates that the planning department writes something and the planning commission approves it. But it didn't say do circular tiers. So that's one thing. But the city council does have, I think, some degree of control over HSID. And there's multiple issues. We had a TOC approved for condominiums, a TOC condominium, without ever getting an answer. How are they going to put ELI units in a condominium complex? And they're just saying, we'll figure it out after it's built. That's not a good answer. HSID continues to do, I don't know if they're doing it virtually, seminars for landlords on how to do cash for keys. Why is our housing department encouraging landlords to avoid the real process of ellising an apartment or multiple apartments and instead figuring out how to do cash for keys? Why is our city giving those seminars? And then why, when we, the single family homes that are being demolished to make way for TOC projects, a good number of the times they've been essentially, maybe not official PSH, permanent supportive housing, but they are group homes, they are sober living homes, they are senior homes, but they're congregate housing. And again, the planning department is not defining that as multifamily or RSO. They're not mandating any relocation fees, and I can assure you those are people who are ending up on the street. Okay, so I'm going to say two more things. Lee has his hand up, and David, can you take over for a minute because I need to unvideo myself, and sadly on another computer log into a Zoom funeral. I'm going to try and do both of these things, but I need a 2-minute break.
Sure,
Hey,
absolutely.
Laura, this is John, just really quick. When we organized the event today, Councilmember Koretz had an out at 1 p.m. And so I just wanted to let you know that he has to leave at 1 o'clock, and we're approaching 1 o'clock right now. So I just want to thank him for coming. And in the chat, we put his website, so anyone can visit his website and contact him or his staff if they need to. So thank you, Councilmember Koretz, for attending. Did you have any last-minute words you'd like to say, or did?
Thank you. Well, maybe I'll address a little bit of the last questions. I'm not sure exactly what HSID is doing with cash for keys, but if they're training landlords on how to do it, which is something we definitely discourage, and many landlords that are not the good ones are giving people less money than they would have due if they're forced out through the Ellis Act, and harassing their tenants and using cash for keys as certainly a negative. So I'll look into what HSID actually is doing in terms of their communications with landlords. And I have not heard much about the idea that some of our TOCs are replacing single family homes that are used as group homes for one reason or another, like sober living facilities. And without a doubt, forcing folks out of those facilities will land some people out on the street. So I'm going to take a look at that issue as well. Thank you, everybody. You've given me a lot of work, but that's a good thing, on some things that I can do on mostly planning related issues to help all of our goals be achieved. So thank you, and thank you for all your good work, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for your attendance and your laundry list of homework. May you have a blessed holiday. All right, I did see Lee was the next hand up. Lee, you want to go on next? And then I see Elizabeth behind that. If anybody else wants to put their hands up, the follow up there. I'll surf the chat to see if there's anything else, but I think our next two questioners have a lot of that. So we'll start with Lee.
So this is a planning and land use question, and it goes to the heart of the very issues that are causing problems and why the budget advocates created a committee to identify equitable planning in conjunction with public works and infrastructure improvements. The first question is how much time and cost is being spent dealing with the off-the-cuff changes that are coming out from the state, and to further go to the point that the esteemed council member raised where he was fighting SB 50 and 330, some of the bad stuff came in. A comprehensive idea would be to invoke the city charter articles 1 and 2 and actually sue the state saying, hey, in your state approved charter, it says that zoning falls on us, the city, and you guys approved our charter. So why are you out on our turf? Instead of fighting multiple different fronts, have them come down here. Now, the other extreme example of erosion of public trust in the planning process comes out with a new council file, Council File 20-1044. And in it, the mover from City Council sent it over to the Planning and Land Use Management Committee for feedback. And the feedback on it was, and just to introduce some folks that might not know about it, the Planning and Land Use Management Committee has significant power over land use decisions in the city. This includes the ability to overturn previous decisions made by the Planning Department and Planning Commission, and to schedule when projects are heard which can impact a developer's ability to meet critical deadlines. For high-value projects, the granting of entitlements can be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The developers of these projects hire teams of consultants and lobbyists, often target members of the Plum Committee, and in some cases, these projects are very large and have citywide impact. For this reason, it is necessary for these high-value projects to bypass the Plum Committee and go directly to the full City Council to be voted on. I therefore move that the City Planning Department, in coordination with the Chief Legislative Analyst, report back in 30 days on developing criteria for high-value projects and amend the planning process to so these projects are diverted from Plum and go directly to the City Council. The report should analyze high-value projects that have gone to Plum since 2013 and take into consideration both the total cost as well as the cost per square foot. Now, the problem with this is that it bypasses another level of oversight, and I found that it's rather inappropriate that the same mover from City Council happens to be also the same mover in the planning and land use. And we all know that certain council members who are now very friendly with the FBI were involved in both the City Council and the Plum, and this motion doesn't really do anything except remove one of the layers of checks and balances. The question is would it not be better to establish a floating neighborhood council seat on these discretionary type projects where they actually have a vote, adding a sort of check and balance? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Lee. And I know with my city council person, when some of these hearings were being suspended early on in the springs, one of the things that he said is that if it was something that was going to be done administratively, in those cases, this is Councilman Blumenfield, he would bring things up to the city council or make sure that there would be hearing when it might be going through without anything, particularly when everything was put on hold before we had virtual meetings on there. So it sounds like it's gone from the sublime to the ridiculous. Does anybody have any comments to that before we move on to Elizabeth? Going once. All right, Elizabeth, you're next.
The question is, by the way, is what is considered a high value project? There was no definition given.
How much you got?
Chime in, but I want to make sure that we tell you, give you some, make sure you know about some things before you leave.
Yes, caller 246.
Hi, this is Stacy again from Mar Vista. I'm glad that the previous speaker brought up 201044. We already have a CIS in opposition scheduled for our plum meeting next week. I wanted to also point out that not only does you know, the reasoning behind this that was, you know, spoken about was that this would in some way contribute to a decrease in temptation for our council members to do bad things. What it conveys to the community is instead of just having our plum committee now, it would tempt the entire city council. But there is a time element involved that would slow down the business of the city council. So if they bypass plum and they go straight to the city council, they'll be spending an entire meeting talking about these projects while everything else on the agenda is then put off to the next meetings. It will cause gridlock at the city council. It's just not a very good way to deal with getting stakeholder input and curtailing some of the issues that they claim to be wanting to address. Thank you for listening.
Yes, thank you for that. We'll move on to Elizabeth then.
Hi, a couple of things. One, I'm interested about this and what you guys are bringing up for this city council file. And it also seems like it's another way of circumventing public input. Not that they usually listen to anything we say. It's again, cutting off the ability for the public to be involved in the process and to observe the process. And I mean, we know that many, including our mayor, on the council and in our elected officers have taken huge portions of their donation money from developers, and particularly the large developers that have a monopoly on our city, like Jameson, Weissman. But my question is kind of going back, because I kind of asked it before and it didn't really get answered, is I'd like to hear from other people, other neighborhood councils, about how they've been able to push through their community plan, because we're literally being told we can't do it. But I know that during COVID, several neighborhood councils areas have had their community plan updated and continued the community plan process. And how they have been able to get these TOC and these housing elements in these community plans. Because that's what we really, really need to do, because our community is literally being destroyed. And it is horrible. Again, Wilshire Center Koreatown has 1/3 of all development in this whole city. And we are a very small land-wise area. And we have no parks. We have very few street lights other than on main corridors. We don't even have streets so you can fit 2 cars down in a lot of areas. So yeah, I would really like to hear from other neighborhood councils on how they've been able to get their community plan updated, and as well as how you get the city and planning to actually respect your community plan, because what we have right now, the planning just ignores our community plan, and they say we are, because they already did a general plan for our area that contradicts our community plan, and so they always cite that, even though we never got to have a say in that process. So I'd really like to hear from other entities about this.
Well, I'll go ahead and speak up a little bit, Elizabeth. In Winnetka, I'm president of Winnetka. We are next to the Warner Center Woodland Hills specific plan. And of course, there's the community plan, which has been working through the system the last couple of years. They kept on scheduling the meetings the same times as our board meetings and our plum committee. So we didn't get to have much input in that. I don't know what the status is, but I would really encourage you to work with the planning people who are putting them together, or see what their schedule is, if there is staff permitting. My first neighborhood council is now called Los Feliz NC, and back when we were Greater Griffith Park, we were very much involved in the Hollywood community plan before that went into effect and then pulled out of effect for all kinds of interesting reasons. year after year, we had the same concerns that never made it to the plan because they said, okay, we're going to get all the questions, all the hearings, and put them all in and factor them in, and then voila, present the new version. What they're doing now is they're doing it iteratively. Those of us in the software world know there's advantages to be able to see the continual improvement over time. What that means, and with the use of technology, rather than a CD-ROM, they've got a lot of stuff on there. And as they go through and have these sessions working with the communities, staffing permitted, as we heard from Councilmember Koretz, there's an opportunity for those changes to be reflected, to be able to see that the changes that you made, and we had years and years of letters and working with planning, actually start creeping into the plan that's being presented before it's finalized. So that's one thing you can do, work with your planning staff. They want to work with people. There's some really good people in there. Again, staffing permitting. What I don't know is the timing of your specifically community plan, where it is on the grand schedule of updates of the 35.
So it's supposed to be done this year. And just to be clear, when I've emailed the NC representative in planning, we have never gotten an email back. We've called multiple times, and then we actually got in touch with one of the higher ups in public affairs at planning, who for us tried to contact the NC, the head of NC communication in planning, and couldn't get in touch with anyone either. We started the community plan process, but the city decided we were going to have a think tank talk about our feelings instead of actually talking about planning. And they have not scheduled any meetings for us. We scheduled that meeting. They pretty much said, you are working with this think tank. You're going to have multiple meetings. It was put off for 6 months. It was put off again. It was put off again. So it wasn't until 2020 when we were supposed to be done that we finally, you know, were about to start getting this process done, but we never had anything scheduled. They haven't done anything. So
We'll also work with your council member, but Laura?
Yeah, I'm trying to have a little input here. So Elizabeth, number one, I think we can't keep this session narrowly focused. What I see online, I took a look, your process is supposed to start this year. Obviously COVID hit. They have, for the west side, been doing the meetings virtually. The person you need to email, or persons or contact at planning, are Arthi Varma and Craig Weber. So Arthi is A-R-T-H-I, that's the first name. Varma, V as in Victor, A-R-M-A. And she oversees everybody who does all community plans. Craig Weber is the manager for the kind of, broad LA, not in the Valley. And he's Craig, C-R-A-I-G .Weber, W-E-B-E-R @lacity.org. I don't know why the folks at the liaisons don't know the answer to this, but that's it. And you should attend your question for how do other NCs impact their community plans. That's a really great topic for Plan Check LA, which meets the second Saturday of most months. And I would suggest you suggest that as a topic and attend that meeting, because that's a lot of NCs. But I think we can't keep talking about.
No, thank you. No. That was perfect. That was enough for me. Thank you.
Thank you. And Stacy, you still have your hand up, but it may be because nobody took it down for you. So do you have a question, comment? Oh, you're muted. Okay. I'm moving on back to Lee, and then we're getting close to that. We're not quite. We have 10 minutes to go before the 1:30. So I actually have another topic. So are you guys, Stacy, Lee, have some further comments, or is just your hand still up?
No, it was a response to the previous lady's question on community plans. What Encino did was we copied the California CEQA conditions, and then we reviewed our plan, what they proposed, and then sent them topics to study in the format of CEQA.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Laura, I don't know if I want to do it now or at the very end, but I want to ask maybe Adele to say some final words, but do you want to wait till the last piece?
Well, I have a question for Adele, moving back to streets.
Okay, perfect.
Are you the person also above the slow streets scenario?
It's with DOT, but we've been helping DOT on it.
Okay, so I'm only going to make the comment that there's a real initiative to make it permanent.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, to this me personally, because we haven't voted yet.
So just to help you, what we're thinking about, and I talk to the mayor and others, as part of the spirit of integration, if you start looking at what's happening on the slow streets, and then we are doing the cooling the streets, and then we're looking at green streets as part of stormwater compliance. Just imagine if we bring all that together,
right,
and can be a holistic. That's the vision. I've been talking to Salida Reynolds from DOT GM with the mayor and others. I believe strongly in that kind of holistic, right? So yes, eventually we need to think about the permanent future of the city, as the mayor said, reimagining, reconfiguring on what we've learned, providing more access, al fresco and slow streets and all that. That's really, people are telling us we need to think differently, and that's what we're looking at, yes.
Right. And I would hope that includes a transparent process, because many neighborhoods were wildly enthusiastic about the beginning of that Slow Streets program. And then it felt a little arbitrary who got it and who didn't, and who's gonna get it and who isn't. And so if you have conversations at the top with folks, let's make the process highly visible as well. Okay, so John, to your point, I'm sorry, I've half lost the point.
Oh, it's okay. Just one thing I wanted to put up, and I apologize for not doing this earlier, but there's a slide from the Bureau of Street Services, aka StreetsLA, and of the things they do. And so their website is there at the bottom, streetsla.ert@lacity.org. I'm sorry, streetsla.lacity.org. And then they have their email right below that, streetsla.ert@lacity.org. And we want to thank the director for coming to this session. Thank you for taking the time on your Saturday for a couple of hours to be here. It's pretty special when you have a head of an agency be here, because they're the top person. They have all the knowledge. They know exactly what's going on. And he's also been with the city for a very long time. So he has a very in-depth knowledge of a lot of different things the Department of Public Works does, not just this bureau. And there are 5 bureaus in the Department of Public Works. Bureau of Street Services, aka StreetsLA, is one of them. A lot of the work they do ties in together. So again, thank you, Adele, for coming. I didn't know if you have any last minute comments you want to make.
Just want to reiterate my goal and my mission is transparency, Laura, is critical to everything we do. I believe strongly in inclusion. And my goal is to collaborate with each and every one of the neighborhood councils, with the community groups, to listen. We need to listen, but also collaborate with you on how we get things done, especially nowadays as we are dealing with limited resources. I'm losing, right now I have a over 20% vacancy in my resources. I can't hire, is a hiring freeze. And then with this, people retiring between now and the first part of next year, potentially I'm losing another 10 to 15% of my staff. That would give me probably 35% reduction. So I'm not a person to complain, but what I'm gonna do is think differently, leverage resources, focus our efforts. I think technology is gonna help us doing the right thing, but I'm honored to serve each and every one in Los Angeles, and honored to work with each and every one of you. I've met with you many times. If I don't know you personally, just know that each one of you means a lot to me, and I want to continue serving you. That culture of service is at the heart of StreetsLA, and my staff will do everything we can to make the streets safe, mobile, and sustainable for everyone. So thank you. It's an honor to be here. I know, thank you for hearing, and I want to say to you, thank you. I mean, I'm doing my job, but you guys are volunteering for your neighborhoods, your communities. So thank you, and I appreciate all of you.
Okay, well, thank you too. I mean, really, really thank you, because you stayed this whole time. It's great. And I do have one very last question. My neighborhood council, we're seeking, like, where did they go? The Prop 1A or Prop 1C funds from years ago, some $14 or $15 million that we don't see where they are. But they were for trees on Crenshaw. It would have gone into Gina's area too. Trees on Crenshaw, trees on Exposition, trees on Jefferson, street furniture. I mean, it's just missing. I don't know where the money was spent. But I imagine that there's also in other parts of town similar stories. So I'm not gonna, don't answer any questions yet. I'll email you, but I think the city also needs to do a much better job that when it gets grant money, of making visible where it goes. Because I'm also remembering many years ago, we got $3 million when $3 million was a lot, to put trees on the, what's now the Expo lawn, but when we acquired the right-of-ways and didn't know what to do with them, the state, we got a $3.1 million grant to plant trees and landscaping, and where'd the money go? Don't answer that. I'm just saying we just need a system that's better to follow up. All right. I think we're done. Are we done?
Thank you.
Is that right, John? Are we done?
No, John's done.
Can somebody save the chat and email it?
Well, everyone can save the chat unless you're on the phone, I think. And is Tony still here? Anybody who's an organizer?
Well, John might be able to answer. Do you know if the chat is being saved to the cloud, as is the recording?
So unfortunately, about a half hour ago, I got accidentally kicked out of the meeting and came back. So I lost part of it. So I wanted to ask if you, David, or Laura could go at the bottom and cook save, because I made you co-host.
Save the chat.
Thank you.
I've been doing that regularly. Of course, private comments are different from the group that patch something together. Absolutely.
Right.
You put my email in the chat. Oh wait, unless you lost the chat, I'll put it in there.
The chat I saved was everyone publicly, so I don't, and I'm going to guess that it would also include the private chats to me, but would not have included private chats to John or to David. So all three of us probably need to save our chats.
Yep.
So.
And we'll redact the
So somebody not me will do an editing job.
Yeah.
You can just send it to me. It's fine.
Right. Thank you.
I appreciate that, because my Zoom kicked me out. It got me back in. My connection was funky for a minute.
Right. No, I have to say.
I had to switch connections in the first session, so I'm on my backyard connection.
How do we get to see the chat if we were on our phone?
I don't know.
Is there a way we can see the chat if we're on our phone? Will they make it available on the Congress page?
Now, we're such experts at this. I can only say I don't know. That's spelled D-U-N-N-O. So I think the answer is that these chats will be edited and sent out to participants.
Thank you, Adel.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Adel.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and great to see you. Have a nice afternoon.
All right.
Okay, so I'm going to wait it out and hit save just before the end.
Thanks, everyone. I don't know if there's a plenary section at the end, so you guys can commence. If that's not the case, I guess we can all go to our post-Congress happy hours, wherever they may be.
Oh, or sat hours in my case.
Well, yes, and sorry to hear that too, Laura.
Yeah. I'm going to leave now and saving the chat one more time. And goodbye.
All right. Hi, Mike.
Thank you
I'll be the
guys.
last
Great
man
job.
off the mountain. Off the mountain.
Thank you,
Yeah, I'm
Laura,
waiting
and thank you,
for me.
David.
Yes.
Thank you guys. Thanks, John.
Yeah.
What, I'm sorry, what NC was Laura from? I'm just interested because she brought up so many issues that were the same we're having. And I'd like to reach out to that NC.
She's the president of United Neighbors Neighborhood Council.
Thank you.
Okay, but she's not in a specific neighborhood council? I thought she would.
She's the president of United Neighbors Neighborhood Council.
That's
What
the name.
area is that?
I think it's
Oh, is that
Adams,
the that's the it includes some of the unincorporated parts of South LA that are still technically part of the city.
I think it's
Glimmer Park.
I think it's incorporated.
Part of the zip code it covers is 90019, if that helps. Mostly Council District 10.
Oh, that explains it. This is the same council
Yeah.
district as most of our area. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
All right. Well, I'm going to end the meeting then. Thank you all, and thank you, David. Appreciate your help.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thank you, Lee, Lisa, Melanie, Vivian. Appreciate your service. Also you, David, and hopefully
All right.
2021 will be a better year.
In the meantime, go Raiders.
Hey, I agree with that. I got my hat, man.
All right. All right. Woohoo.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for your
And Rams.
service.